What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Derek O'Shea Show as we wait for Jen Psaki to get the press started. We're going to hang out and listen to
do clean up this enormous
some
piles of
NBC News snore.
just sitting and polluting the
How you guys
landscape
doing
in
today?
Pennsylvania.
Make
But
sure
on the
I'm
flip
live
side,
everywhere.
They release about 50% more CO2 than even burning regular coal, as well as other greenhouse gases. And environmentalists are really concerned about that.
Sweet.
All right. And Olivia, I mean, one expert you spoke with called Bitcoin mining a, quote, waste by design. What about this
Bitcoin
system
mining
sort of reinforces wasting natural
Cool.
resources?
We're live everywhere. We're live on
It's pretty complex, but the main thing you need to
Twitter,
know is the process of
Twitch,
making,
Facebook,
verifying Bitcoin
YouTube,
transactions and making new Bitcoin is very
and
energy
Rumble.
inefficient by design. It involves a
Well, now
network
we're
of
just waiting for
miners
Jen.
using very powerful
Tell me
computers
something I
competing
don't
against each
know.
other in an elaborate guessing game. And these computers need an enormous amount
These
of
computers
electricity
need
to
an
power them.
enormous amount
And
of
so because of that, the
electricity.
Bitcoin network currently consumes more electricity than a lot of small countries, including the Philippines, and will only consume more if
Anything
more
to
people begin
demonize
use
Bitcoin with
and
these
other
people.
cryptocurrencies.
All right, Olivia Sloan for us there. Olivia, thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
The population of monarch butterflies has dramatically fallen in recent years. The combination of habitat loss, pesticides, and climate change have all pushed the beautiful insects to the brink of extinction. But now a group of combat veterans is trying to save them and heal themselves in the process. NBC News digital reporter Denise Chow joins us now.
Supposed to be starting now.
Denise, this is just, you know, it's a fascinating story. Who are these veterans?
Just waiting on Jen to show up.
Yeah, well, this organization is called Guardian Grange, and it was started.
As always, guys, if I'm responding to a question you do not see,
California.
not the flutterflies.
Last year, he personally witnessed how
Dude, you gotta watch out. I'm worried about him. But like butterflies are being wiped out. These combat veterans.
After dealing with trauma and PTSD. And the Butterfly Preserve came about through his network of friends. He had heard about this filmmaker in Northern California named Ola Bell, who
Man, that girl's waiting on Jen. Oh, right here? Nope. That girl's mic is messing up.
That's Denise Chow for us there.
Denise, your mic is messing up.
The internet connection may be a little bit poor, so hopefully we can get more on
I think it's the butterflies coming in hot.
The program or even later on this week. That was Denise. Thank you so much, Denise.
Thanks, Dee.
And Hurricane Ida knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of people in Louisiana, exposing really the fragility of the state's power grid. It also showed just how resistant Entergy, the state's largest energy provider, has been to making necessary improvements for their future.
Waiting on the press
NBC
conference.
News digital reporter John Shupe has been
Butterflies
reporting
took
on
it
this
down.
for us, and he joins us now. John, how has Entergy been able to really avoid changes and upgrades to the power grid? I mean, this seems like it was something that perhaps should have been done quite a while ago.
Well, yeah, and Entergy says that it has spent billions of dollars.
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Just kidding. Don't do any of those things.
On local pieces of its network. But the key here, what
dude with the
talk
butt
about
chin
is
coming in
why
hot.
Entergy has failed is the long-range transmission lines. These are the lines that are critical to delivering
Beautiful
more power
lighting,
from solar and
very
wind farms around the country.
cinematic.
Also critical to delivering power to places where storms have not.
Fantastic lighting for this guy.
Where Entergy has avoided upgrades, the critics say. An example of this is a company outside of Entergy's territory wanted to come in to
I got a budget
and build one of these long-range transmission lines. Entergy lobbied for a law in Texas that
only those without a butt chin wish they had one
on such projects. The law got passed. The project never got built.
That's why I have a beard. I'm insecure about my lack of butt chinness.
Trying to curb the expansion of solar power in its territories. It lobbied in Louisiana to reduce the amount of credits given to people who have solar panels on their roofs.
But how is there not more oversight for such a critical utility? Because, I mean, a lot of people are saying this is sort of a monopoly.
Right.
It is a monopoly. A lot of utilities in our country are monopolies. And the deal with monopolies is you can operate a utility monopoly in a particular part of the United States. The exchange, so to speak, is that regulators, state and federal regulators, are going to have oversight of you. And so technically, It's the federal and state regulators who have oversight over a company like Entergy. The question is, how much oversight do the regulators provide?
What?
And Entergy is a
This
big,
guy's like
powerful
for the
company,
monopoly?
and it works to influence that process as well.
I'm confused.
All right, NBC reporter
All
John
right.
Shuby for us there. John, thank you.
John, thank you, John.
Thank you.
My butt chin is so
making
proud
news
of it,
right
so I
now,
can't grow
evacuations
hair
are
on my
underway in
chin.
Northern California as the Fawn Fire continues to burn.
Uh,
5 days ago near Redding, California, and since then it has
You're a
forced
lying
more than
dog-faced
8
pony
towns
shit.
Hey, appreciate that.
A 30-year-old woman has been arrested for starting the fire.
Hey, be
Just
proud of your
now,
butt chin. Seriously.
45% contained.
Hold down the butt chin
Pennsylvania
fort.
community is counting their blessings after police foiled a planned school shooting. 4 teens are under
There's a bunch of
arrest
us
for
that
planning to
wish we had
attack
'em.
their school on the 25th anniversary of the massacre at Columbine
Your butt
High
chin is
School
just
in
like,
April. The mother
no
of
hair
the
around
discovered
it,
a group text that was
because I
discussing
want
that
to be
attack.
shown
The 2 teens are being
I'm here,
charged
I'm
with
loud,
assaults and
and I'm
charged with
proud,
possession
and
of
I'm
weapons of
here.
mass destruction, criminal conspiracy, and aggravated assault. New York Governor Kathy Hochul announcing a new
Mr.
fund
Leak
to help
Tastic,
undocumented
Mr.
New Yorkers
Bombastic.
affected by Hurricane Ida.
All right.
The $27 million fund will be
Just
used
waiting
to
on
help
this thing to get
undocumented
started,
people whose homes
guys.
were damaged by that flooding. Undocumented people do not currently qualify for federal
Fall Guys,
assistance,
fall
and this
screen.
new program would be available to those who cannot
They
get
do.
help from FEMA to cover
And I did too.
repairs. The money will be distributed by local nonprofits, and people will have until November 26th.
Whoa, look at all that
to
trash.
apply.
Ugh.
We are closely watching the vote in Germany to replace Chancellor Angela Merkel. After
Yeah,
an
she.
extremely
You got
tough
beat,
national
Angela.
election this
What
week,
up?
The center-left Social Democrats have won the biggest share of the vote, narrowly beating out Merkel's center-right Union bloc. Now, Social Democrats won 25.7% of the vote, compared to Merkel's Union bloc with 24% of the vote. Vice Chancellor Olaf Scholz is poised to become the next chancellor. NBC News
Wow.
foreign correspondent Matt Bradley is tracking all of this.
Think I hear
for us
something?
and joins us now live
No,
from
I don't.
Berlin. Matt, first,
Matt,
break
tell
down
us.
what these results mean. What happens now, and who is in charge?
Well, I mean, who's in charge, Morgan? The same woman who's been in charge for the last 16 years, the
Burn.
Queen of Europe herself, Angela Merkel. She's still
The
in
Queen
office.
of
She's
Europe?
still the chancellor, as she has been for such a long time. And, she's going to remain in charge for the foreseeable future until they can come up with a
Yeah, the
coalition.
screen
These
you have
negotiations
set for followers is a
are
character
quite
from it.
old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes
It
sense.
looks as though her
I enjoy it.
party got something of a
What are they
beating
going over in the briefing
these
today? Can't
elections
imagine it's
yesterday.
anything
It's the
interesting.
worst
Yeah,
showing
we'll
for
see.
Merkel's CDU, the
Maybe they'll
Christian
talk
Democrats,
about
ever
Joe
since
Biden
the end of World
showing
War
us
II,
his
but it's
hot
not
arm
as bad as
today.
that, really. They were only beaten by
I don't know.
about 1.6%.
There's a lot going on in the news, so
Percentage
we'll
points.
see
That's
what
not
happens
very
as
much.
far as like
It
the
does
migrants,
give Olaf
infrastructure
Scholz,
bill
you just
this
mentioned,
week,
kind of a prime position. He's in
booster
a very good
shots,
spot
vaccine
to lead
mandates.
negotiations
Maybe they'll actually talk about what's going on in Germany or the other world.
become the chancellor. Now, whether
Some of
they
the
actually succeed in
my
doing
news that
that's
it's coming
dependent
out in
on
like
so
an
many
hour.
factors, Morgan. This is such a complicated process.
An illegal immigrant was caught setting fires in California, and a forestry woman is caught setting fires in California. So, is it climate change or is it
Yeah, and speaking of that
environmental
question, I mean, it's really
activists
give
setting fires
power
in
to those
California?
smaller
Because
parties
just like
now
that
because
Stanford
they now have to
professor
be
that
involved in
not
the
too
mix
long
to
ago was
eliminate this
caught setting
coalition
fires in
government. So
California. I
what
couldn't
are the
freaking believe that crap.
implications of this election here
But,
in
you
the
know,
United States?
that kind of stuff doesn't get put on the news, even though it's
This might affect
there. It's just you have to
America's
find it.
relationship with Germany.
I don't know what else you could be talking about. Hopefully, you talk about the.
Morgan, the short answer is it probably won't. And that's because
I'm just ready to see her get riled up.
the first one is that
Dude.
both of the frontrunners, the people who were really running to try to replace Chancellor Merkel, they spent the entire campaign trying to stylize themselves.
What do you want them to talk about,
trying to be as
Mr.
pro-Brexit
Leatastic?
as possible. Now, also, they're going to be running in a they're going to be governing within a coalition. So that coalition means that
Also, just a reminder,
from the left,
I have people watching on YouTube. I have people watching on Twitter. I have people watching on Facebook. If I answer a question that you don't see, it's because I'm not losing my mind. I
a lot of change.
have
Joe
other
Biden's
people chatting
already
in.
had a very good relationship with Angela Merkel, as did his predecessor from before, Barack Obama, who had a very close relationship with Angela Merkel. And with this Angela Merkel
Yeah.
light, who's probably going to be taking the
She
chancellorship
is
next,
8 minutes
we can
late.
expect very little change in
Gotta love
transatlantic
it.
relations.
All
You
right,
gotta
NBC's
love it,
Matt
Pat
Bradley
Pop.
for us there in Berlin. Matt, as always, thank you.
Nah.
A supply
Come
chain
back
crisis
sometime.
is wreaking havoc across the United Kingdom. Gas stations are running bone dry and even closing in some places as people race
it's called
to
petrol
panic buy
stations
fuel.
in the
But
UK.
why is this happening?
Petrol.
Well, it's because of a shortage of some 100,000 fuel truck drivers.
Nerds on other platforms
now
are
the
jealous of me.
government is stepping in, announcing it will issue
Hey, is
thousands
that, wait,
of
that's
emergency
that
visas to
hacker guy,
foreign
isn't
truck
it? That sticker
drivers.
you just put.
Let's go ahead and bring in
I love
NBC
that
News
guy.
foreign correspondent Kelly Kobieva for more on this. Kelly, what do we
Dude,
know
same with me.
about why we're seeing
Everyone's
this shortage
totally
of truck
jealous.
drivers in the first place?
Well,
Yeah,
Morgan, this has been a problem a long time coming. Over the course of the pandemic, well, you had two things.
We forced
The
vaccinations
pandemic
and they all quit.
and,
Just say it.
Brexit. And over the course of the past 2 years, essentially, truck
Love
drivers have
that
been
coat.
retiring. They've been going back to Europe because of Brexit. Before Brexit, they didn't need a visa to work in this country. Now they do. Pandemic struck, many went home. They haven't come back. So you have this massive shortfall of hauliers, of truck drivers delivering all sorts of things around the country. The estimates are around 90 to 100,000.
Dude, the minute the truck drivers go down, that's when stuff really starts to change. I don't know what I want to see today. Probably more the mask mandate. I'm just bored
say that they've been warning about this
on that mask
for
mandate. I'm
months
bored out of my
and that
mind
nothing
at
has
work,
been
and I'm
done.
browsing
One of
Twitch.
the issues during the pandemic was that
Well,
truck driver
you may or may not like my
tests
channel, but
weren't
we're gonna
taking place.
party.
So
We're gonna have a
there
good time.
There weren't a lot of new truck drivers coming into the
I can
stream,
completely
as
understand being
well.
bored at work.
And now you have a situation where
I am on my lunch break as
some
we
gas
speak.
stations in this country are running dry. The government says that they're addressing it.
Come on,
they're,
Jen. Where
trying
you at?
to, establish some
Show up.
emergency visas, about
You gotta
5,000
have a
emergency
time.
visas, as you said,
11:30.
so that
I'm just gonna double
European
check.
drivers will come back into the country and retake those jobs.
Check the White House
but
schedule.
Those visas will only last until
So I don't
Christmas,
feel like a
and
fool.
there is
And they're
a
like,
bigger
it's
plan
actually
in place
changed
again.
3
We're
hours
talking
later.
about thousands of new
Still
jobs,
says
new
1:30
truck
p.m.
drivers,
Eastern.
not tens
You
of
are-
thousands, which is what this country needs. Morgan.
And Kelly, what else is the government really looking to do to remedy this problem? I mean, what are all the available options ahead?
The available option is maybe pay the truck
Well, as I
drivers
mentioned,
more.
The emergency visas are out there. That's one possibility, but we're only talking about 5,000.
Tell people to
there.
stop being
4,000 more truck drivers in the stream coming down the pike in the next several weeks. In the short term, there
Is
has
a scam
been
baiter answer.
there have
Yeah.
been many reports in
Yeah.
the British media.
I like that guy,
government
the
was
scam baiter
considering
guy.
Bringing in the army.
I love his
to have
stuff.
The army
And his little
deliver
grandma
fuel
voice.
to some of these stations. The government has denied that. They said that that's not necessary. In fact, they've said,
I feel like I could put a grandma
as
voice
have
on
many
my
of these big suppliers like BP,
thing right now.
that there is no
Let's see.
national shortage.
While we wait.
They say that this is the result of panic buying. Now, try telling that to some of the people we've heard from over the past several days who've waited in line for an hour or more to get fuel, who have looked for open gas stations
Let's
and
see.
have struggled to find them. That just doesn't hold water to those people. But the government is insisting, look, there were a couple of sporadic incidents where some stations weren't able to get fuel, but they say really this is about
sound a bit
panic
different?
buying, and if people just
Do I
return
sound
to their
different?
normal demand
I'm liking the
in a
Bernie Sanders
couple of
voice he's
days,
doing recently.
this should
Tony talks a lot.
sort itself out.
All right, a lot happening there.
Excuse
Kelly
me.
Kobieva, thank you so much for your reporting. We really appreciate it. Meanwhile, the crisis is far from over. on
Thanks
the
so much
Spanish
for your
island of La
awesome
Palma, where a
reporting.
volcano is still spewing lava. More than a week after erupting, only a small fraction of the 6,000 evacuees have been able to actually return
All right, I'm
home.
back.
Sky News reporter Becky Cottrill is following the latest.
Come on. What are we waiting for?
This lava is moving at 30 meters an hour.
This lava
It's
is
not
moving
fast,
at
but it's
30
really hot,
meters an
over
hour.
1,200 degrees Celsius. and burning up
What's
everything
Celsius?
that gets
I'm
in its
American.
way. Thankfully, everyone has so far managed to escape it. When people fled their homes, they didn't just leave belongings. Eliza Gonzalez was told she couldn't take her dog Luna when she was evacuated.
She couldn't take her
The
dog?
reunion at this improvised animal sanctuary is bittersweet.
Sanctuary.
Dogs aren't allowed where she's staying, so Luna will have to be fostered.
There are good people that offered their houses for the
Probably.
dogs to stay in and be calm.
Of the thousands evacuated, it's still only safe
see what
for
else I have.
160 people to return home. Scientists say the pressure inside the volcano has decreased in the past 24 hours, but that doesn't mean the eruptions are about to stop. When this ends, that's something
the volcano is absolutely exploding at the moment, and there's a huge problem with what's going on.
Ernesto de Paz Perez is a banana farmer. The island depends on the crop for around half of its economic output. But the volcanic dust is damaging the fruit's skin, and the eruption has cut off the farm's water supply.
If it keeps going for a long time, it will cause a lot of damage. If the banana fields are not watered, we will lose them. There will be many losses, many losses.
The airport is open again.
Jen, where are you, Jen? We are waiting patiently for you, girl.
And return to normal. But when that will be, no one knows. Becky Cottrell, Sky News, La Palma.
Oh, man.
A set of twins with an unbreakable bond. Up
Why do all these channels use British hosts, even the American? I don't know. It does feel weird, doesn't it? It's like... I heard an easy way to make British people very angry is just tell them they have a speech impediment. That's so messed up. I don't know. I don't know why our American obsession is with British people and movies and our press. It's because it sounds absolute. It sounds sophisticated.
You have to be in it, and that's what we're gonna do.
We're gonna be in it.
To the front lines of the story, where it's actually happening, with NBC News journalists on the ground from all over the world. We cover what you need to know,
and what you need to know, we won't show you. We have a narrative that we must push.
Top story with Tom Yamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
Tom Yamas?
Does the White House think they have an Afghanistan problem or a COVID problem?
Usually
the abortion issue should reflect the will of the people or the will of the elected officials. The vaccine mandate. Is this going to work or is this going to backfire? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Well, the abortion mandate, I feel like it goes twofold then, right? Because the people vote for the people in power. I don't know.
This is Southlake. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast. Free wherever you get
Chuck Todd. Okay, I am so tired of people with making millions of dollars have these big platforms, these big shows, and they have a freaking podcast. Why do they need a podcast too? It's like, what? Every news station, it's like, you know, like you have Tucker Carlson, you have Tucker Carlson podcast, you have Joy Reid, you have Joy Reid podcast, you have everyone has a freaking podcast, including me. But I don't have a huge show. I don't know why they make them do podcasts too. It's so dumb. Well, I thought this would go faster, but it's truly not. Come on. When things are at a tipping point, we need dialogue over drama. Except we're the news, and we need to create a narrative. Oh, I hear them. Here we go. All right. Gotta have one where we can just talk about the news and another where we're just allowed to go play. Yeah, that's so true. You need to have both. All right, what are the trigger words we're gonna use for today's? What words are we looking for? I'm gonna look for booster shots. Anytime I hear the word booster shots, we're gonna scream.
Oh, good.
And equity. Yes. Except she says it all the time. Booster shots. I'm gonna go booster shots and mandate. Yeah, I like mandate. Okay. Booster shots and vaccine mandates. We're gonna go with that. Anytime you hear it, be sure to scream. I don't care if you're at work, you're at home, you're around everyone, and just scream. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, Joe.
Come on,
man.
Come on, man.
Well, I thought she was about to walk out any second now, bruh.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Happy Monday.
Here she comes
Okay,
to wreck the day.
So, even as we are facing an inflection point clearly this week, I wanted to take the opportunity to just remind everyone, specifically in the public, of what we're talking about in these packages and why the president is fighting so hard to get his agenda forward. So, included in these packages that the president is fighting to move forward on with leadership, we are working to lower the excruciatingly high cost of prescription drugs, which, by the way, over 80% of the American public supports. We're also working to make historic investments in crumbling roads and bridges, which over 80% of Americans support. We're working to pass historic tax cuts for middle-class families. 50 million Americans would get their taxes cut, 4 million small businesses. We're working to stop our children from drinking poison drinking water and get every American access to high-speed internet. People in cities and rural communities who haven't had access over the past several years, which over 75% and 66% of Americans endorse, respectively. We're working to cut the skyrocketing cost of childcare, something that is preventing millions of women, or hundreds of thousands of women at least, perhaps, from going back into the workforce. And we're working to take on the devastating impacts of climate change that we're already seeing do terrible damage to our economy and national security. So even as we're having important debates about timelines and reconciliation processes and parliamentary processes, I just wanted to take a moment and remind everybody
she
what
is
this
tired
is all
today.
about. But Zeke, go ahead.
You didn't mention the end of the fiscal year, the expiration of government funding.
Yeah.
Use your words.
Is the president making calls to Republicans or White House aides reaching out to Republicans to encourage them to back that this year?
We are certainly engaged with a broad range
You have a
of
mask on.
members
Talk
and
loud.
offices about moving every component forward. And it was not an intentional oversight. I was trying to add the components of the reconciliation package and the infrastructure bill, which sometimes gets shorthanded. But I'm happy to talk about raising the debt ceiling as well, or preventing a government shutdown if you
Here, this Klaus.
On a different topic, was the White House involved in brokering the prisoner swap between China and Canada on Friday? And then also,
Were we involved with China
sort
or
of deal
Canada?
incentivize
No.
China to sort of unjustly seize foreign nationals.
He's trying to like make a story out of
Of course,
this?
we'd not refer to it in those terms. We would refer to it as, one, an action by the Department of Justice, which is an independent Department of Justice. This is a law enforcement matter as it relates to specifically the Huawei official who was
Speak up.
released.
Right.
So this is a legal matter.
These
I would
people are-
note that the president and every member of our administration, national security officials who have had contacts with Chinese officials
Use
over
your
the
words.
past 9 months have made clear that they want to see the release of the two Michaels and, of course, any American
Release
who
the
is,
Michaels.
Not able to leave China.
So was the White House involved in the freeing of the two Michaels?
We make the case consistently at every level, and we have for some time now, including in the president's call with President Xi about the importance of these two individuals returning back to their home.
And the action here, deferring the charges linked to the release of the two
Michael
Canadians,
Myers.
doesn't that create sort of an incentive structure that will give China more reason to do this sort of thing again?
Well, I think it's important to note and to be very clear about this. There is no link. It is not. We have an independent Justice Department. We can't determine how the Chinese or others manage their business over there. It's a little bit different. But we have an independent Justice Department that
they
made
have concentration
independent,
camps and
decisions,
child
law
labor. It's
enforcement
totally
decisions.
fine.
At the same time, we have
They're
made
just
no
being-
secret
they're doing
about
do.
our push
They're doing
to
do. They're
have
doing
the two
themselves.
Michaels released. That's certainly positive
two
news and
Michaels.
good news.
And just,
Michael
just
Scott.
Briefly, on the booster, the president got his booster.
Booster!
The White House proper considered one of those high-risk settings like healthcare. grocery stores and the like.
Sure. Well, the CDC, as you all know, just released this information or these recommendations, this guidance on Friday, and so there hasn't been a determination made. But I will note, since you gave me the opportunity, it's pretty clear. This is one of the reasons the president conveyed this as well, exactly what this means. People who are 65 years and older, they can look at their vaccine cards. If it's been more than 6 months and they had the Pfizer shot, they should go get another shot. Long-term care residents and staff, people who are 18 years and older who have underlying medical conditions, including asthma, diabetes, obesity. There are others.
Obesity! You said that word! Oh my gosh, I'm so triggered.
Grocery store workers who had the Pfizer shot, just look at your vaccine card. If it's been more than 6 months, you should go get a shot.
Who's going to make that determination about the White House complex?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that a White House medical office?
We follow CDC guidelines, but given the guidelines just came out on Friday, we're still making a determination about how it would be applied.
Better Twitch TV. Oh, basically just says lots of stuff. Oh.
About Huawei. I just wanted to ask how you would respond to allegations from congressional Republicans that the deferred prosecution agreement for the Huawei CFO.
Oh, I'm going to check out Better Twitch TV. Thank you.
Appeasement, and calls into
I didn't even
question
know about that. I don't
Biden's
know
ability
too
to
much
deal
about
with threats
Twitch.
From China, that hostage taking works
I'm gonna
from
write
the
it
United
down.
States, etc.
It may feel foreign to them that the Department of Justice is independent, but it is independent under this administration. And this is a legal matter. It was an announcement made by the Department of Justice, and it's inappropriate for me to weigh in on that further. What I would note, though, because I think there was a lot wrapped up in their criticism there, is that our policy has not changed. Our policy toward China.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Conflict. It is a relationship of competition, and we're going to continue to hold the PRC to account for its unfair economic practices, its coercive actions around the world, and its human rights abuses. And we will continue to do that in partnership with our allies around the world. We will also continue to engage with the PRC to keep channels of communication open to responsibly manage the competition and discuss potential areas of interest where those align. So there is absolutely zero impact. No one should read it as an impact on our substantive
Yeah, no one
policy.
read anything.
This is a legal matter and a legal decision.
Just to quickly follow up, did President Biden discuss Huawei on his recent call with President Xi?
He raised the two individuals, the two
I'm
Michaels,
sure he did.
Who have been released. Very positive news. It should not come as a surprise.
You're a
that
lying dog-faced
President
pony
Xi,
soldier.
Raised,
Thank you.
The Huawei official. But again, there was no negotiation
Reading bad,
on this
burning
call.
books good.
These two leaders raised the cases of these individuals, but there was no negotiation.
Burn 'em all.
It was President Biden raising and pressing again for the release of these two Michaels, as is something that happens in every engagement we do with the Chinese, or had up to this point in time. Go ahead.
Jen, you opened by talking about how popular the president's agenda is as reflected in these bills, prescription drugs and child care and climate change. If the president's agenda is so popular with the American people, why can't he find the votes to get it through Congress? And why hasn't he rallied public support, really, to get this done?
Well, I would say first, if public support is right around 80% for most of the initiatives, then public support has been rallied. As it relates to the politics of Washington, which sometimes the zip code we're all living in here operates disconnected from where the American public is. I think we can all evaluate that, or seen that happen over time. I noted that because it's important for people to understand this is what the American people want. Roads, rails, bridges, they are not Republican or Democratic. They are.
What else is in the bill, though?
They are improvements the American people want.
God.
People want improvements to child care.
I hate how much politicians lie. Just be honest about what's in the bill. Don't just say the three things. It's like a 5,000-page bill, and you're like, roads, infrastructure, and cable internet. What could go wrong?
The president knows that. Nothing is guaranteed. And we are working, as you heard him say, he's an optimist by nature, but he's going to work this afternoon, tonight, tomorrow, to do everything he can.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Democrats,
Joe Biden ain't working
with a range
tonight.
of positions to get this agenda forward.
Democrats are obviously in control of the government, so it's not the zip code, it's the party. And he's the leader of the party.
Well, you asked me first about the popularity of these initiatives and why there weren't more votes broadly, which is a good question, but that's what I was answering to you. Look, I would again say that what we know is among Democrats, there is broad agreement about the need to cut costs for childcare, the need to invest in roads and rails and bridges,
She's
make us
saying
more
all her favorite
competitive,
parts.
make our tax system more fair, address the climate crisis. There are disagreements around what the size of
Mr. Leet-tastic, I'm going to ask you a question. You're new to my channel. If we had more railroads, would you use a railroad over an airplane? I'm curious what your thoughts on that.
To move the agenda forward and get
Because
it over
I
the
would
finish
never.
line.
Just one question
I'm
on
trying to get to my
President
destination.
Putin.
I'm not trying to have a good time.
Display you have here. Is it partly a concern that after all the back and forth on the advice and guidance from the government, people are confused about the booster and maybe even more doubtful about it?
Well, I would say the reason we did this chart is because sometimes it's self-perpetuating. If everybody here is saying it's confusing, then people are going to think it's confusing. And so what I'm trying to do is alleviate the confusion, right? And explain.
This administration has done a great job of leaving. Everyone knows what.
6 months ago,
no one's confused.
Go get another shot. If you took Moderna or J&J, they're still considering that data. Don't get the shot yet. Not approved yet. So we want to do everything we can to alleviate any confusion, answer questions people have. President went and got his shot, his booster shot on camera to make clear it's safe, it's effective, it's something you should do if you're in one of these categories. Go ahead.
Hey, Chi-Town, baby. I just moved from Chicago. I used to live in the Gold Coast area.
Reconciliation package?
I certainly understand your question, Caitlin, but I'm not going to speak on their behalf about what they, where they stand at this point in time.
Have they told the president, though, what their price tag is?
I will let them speak for what their points of view are. There have been
She's a little angry today. I
discussions.
like
We've
it.
been in close contact with
Getting a
them,
little fire
as
in
well
today's.
as a range of members about the path forward.
Without saying what they are, you can't just say if they've actually told the president, here's where we
We'll let them speak for what conversations they've had privately. We're not going to provide more details.
I've been watching these all year long and
what is
slowly
your
watching the
understanding
press
on
turn
what
on this
happens to the
administration
CDC and the
has
FDA's
been
work on the pandemic if the government loses funding this week?
Well,
It makes
let me
for
first
fun
say
press
that
conferences.
It is never a good thing for the government to shut down, and that is why we are doing everything
I could care
we
less
can
if the
to
government shut
prevent
down.
that
You guys
from
are losers,
happening.
and you
because
destroy
a great
economies
deal of public health,
and
if not all of it, most
destroy
of the
the
public
dollar.
health work would be exempted.
It'd be nice if you didn't
from
work
a
for a little
government
bit. How about
shutdown,
that?
But that doesn't change the fact that having
This idea that
services
the government
shut
shut down,
staffing
everyone's
cut in
life
different
goes to
agencies
hell
is
is
not
so
in
dumb.
the interests of addressing any crisis we face, including the pandemic.
So will they continue to work at 100% when it comes to the pandemic response, or
Nordy.
what is the preparation for that?
Well, we of course, as I noted and confirmed last week, we had begun making contingency plans, as every government does, as every Office of Management and Budget does, to plan.
I had to move
but
from
again,
Chicago
public
because
health officials, for the most part, would be exempt.
Crook County.
But government shutdowns also are hugely costly. They would include the cutting of staff. At a range
Everything
of
you guys
agencies.
do is
That's not a
hugely
positive
costly.
thing, obviously.
Just saying.
But thank you, Jen. President Biden mentioned that this evening he'd be meeting with Democrats, as I'm sure he'll be doing all week.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can share about? It's not me this time.
It's okay.
Anything you can
Get
share
her out.
No one even remembered that until you brought it up. There you go.
About who he's
Come
meeting
on,
with,
man.
whether those meetings will be in person or on the phone.
Sure, understand your interest. Let me just tell you that, one, we all ate our Wheaties this morning. I expect that's going to be the breakfast all week, and things are constantly changing
Breakfast Club,
every
per
day
se.
and certainly even every hour. And we are evaluating. The president has some space in his schedule to make calls, to bring people down here. We're not that far from the
I
hill.
hate when people
so
talk
we
like
will
that
keep you
and
abreast
say
as
these
these details are
things and go
finalized.
up on the last
but we're
word of the
working through that
sentence.
now, and I
I
expect
hate
that will
that
be
so
the case for
much.
the coming days.
And then publicly, progressives like Congresswoman Jayapal, Senator Sanders have said they are open
Well,
to
it has.
hearing what somebody
So
wants to
whoever's in
cut
control, the
from
minority
the
party will
reconciliation
try to
package.
shut
When
down the
asked about a
government. And
figure
the
lower than
Democrats that
3.5.
did it before. So
Does the White House agree that
it's
something
it's just a method of slowing down a bill. Every party does it. Whoever's not in power. It's just. I could
This
care
is
less.
exactly
So
part of the discussion that's being had between
maybe with a government shutdown, they'll actually read this infrastructure bill.
out of all parties, I should say, but
As opposed to
many
just
members of
shoving
the
it
Democratic
down
Party right
everyone's
now,
throat.
and there are a range of options, but I'm just not going to outline those or detail those from here.
Just one more on the vaccine mandate.
Sure.
The president said he's
Vaccine
going to
mandates.
Chicago on Wednesday. The OSHA rule was still in the rulemaking process.
Yeah.
Do you have any update on when that will be done so businesses can implement it, and when you think that will happen?
Well, there are a number of businesses that have already implemented it, even before, or already implemented, I should say, their own requirements, even before the OSHA rulemaking. And some of these businesses are in Chicago.
Shut down.
United is an example, obviously. They implemented a vaccine mandate several weeks ago. And had a huge increase in the number of employees who've been vaccinated. So what the president's going to continue to do is lift up private sector companies and businesses that have already put in place mandates, even as the rulemaking process
Update on a timeline.
That's so many mandates.
I would point you to OSHA. We knew it would take a little bit of time,
Don't
given
say
there are
it.
some very understandable and good questions by the business community. We want to
Don't say
ensure
it.
they want to ensure there's clarity when they put out the
Don't
rules.
say it.
But businesses can employ it. It's become more popular. It's been very successful in the vast majority of businesses
say
that
it.
have implemented mandates.
What leverage do you believe the president has in political or in terms of specific pieces of the legislation? What leverage does the president have with Democrats?
Pull your
In terms
mask
of
up,
getting
young
his-
lady.
The agenda forward? Well, I would say one, it's a hugely popular package. Each item in itself, that's why we know some of the specifics here, has broad support among the American public. But I would also say that if you talk to most
Or the
Democrats
five people
who are
we
in
polled.
Congress, most certainly most Democrats in the country, there's not disagreement about the fundamentals of what we're trying to achieve. And there is agreement that we need to address the climate crisis, that we need to cut costs for childcare, for college, that we need to make it easier for women to rejoin the workforce.
Cut
we
costs?
need to
Why
rebuild
don't we
and
just
modernize our infrastructure. So
not
there's
charge so much.
There's agreement on that. There's a basic discussion that needs to happen or is ongoing. We're right in the weeds of it now on what the size of the package looks like. But I will also note
Colleges
we've
are
done
like
this a little bit
bloated
in the past couple days,
institutions.
but that this
That's why it costs so
package, the
freaking much. It's
reconciliation
so
package,
stupid.
costs $0. So what I'm saying,
I don't want the
case we're
government to
making here
subsidize
is
these
that
mega
there needs to be agreement on the different
all
components.
these
There's broad
colleges. It's so
agreement on the
stupid
goals,
that we have to
and then
subsidize
there needs
them.
to be agreement on what the revenue pay-fors are. There's a range of options for revenue pay-fors. Clearly, the president has laid out the different areas that he would like to invest in, and all of that needs to come together. That's where we're in the weeds on now.
Is it a political problem for the president that he's having difficulty bringing together his own party?
First of all, we're in the process
Yes.
now. The president, again, doesn't underestimate
The answer
how
to that question is
challenging,
yes.
getting all of these pieces of legislation forward is. We're in the middle of it right now. And there is broad agreement about the different components of his agenda. So what he's working to do now is unify the party around the path forward. That's what we're in the middle of. I don't think it's a little too
Path
early
forward,
to evaluate
build
how
back
it's going to
better.
end.
It could go into next week? That's your expectation?
We'll
Pelosi
see.
said Thursday.
Go ahead. I'll come back to you, Jay.
There's some reporting today that the White House and Democrats are considering, or at least looking at means testing for some of the items in the reconciliation bill. Is that something that you would consider?
What? What'd you say?
It
Beans
depends on how
testing?
you define what that exactly is, right? There are income requirements for a range of different components
Yeah,
of the
but
president's agenda.
if we
right?
subsidize them, we pay for it eventually in some capacity. That's
Right, but I'm not going to negotiate all the specifics.
They should
from
just be
here.
run
I'm
better
just going to give you
instead
just a
of
broad case understanding
crippling
of how we've already approached
18-year-olds.
things to date. Depends on how you're describing exactly what that is, right? We don't give the child tax credit every.
I don't think you
family
need to
is
go to
not,
college anymore
eligible
anyway, so-
for the child tax credit.
What do you
in
need
the
to go to college
country.
for?
Every
The college
person
experience?
is not eligible for the earned income tax credit.
So you can
There are
party?
income requirements for a variety of components. So there are.
You can
some
learn
who
anything on
propose
the internet
that.
nowadays. I
Obviously,
don't-
the president.
Besides,
there are components as you
like
can see.
my job, I need a licensure, and that's the only reason I have a master's degree. But if you need a licensure, it's different, and I freaking hate that I have to do that. But other than that, why go to college?
Well, again, I think
don't-
you
I
should
don't
look at
know.
the president's past proposals and what he's supported in the past, where there has been prioritization in the past in some areas for components of his agenda that made it have an income cap, so that we could expand the scope of who could get
I
it
did it 'cause
without it
my
being too
boomer
high income.
parents.
And just one more, as
Oh,
he
you-
sat down with Prime
So my parents said, "Don't go to college," and it made me want to go to college. So I don't know.
he advised him not to take questions. Can you explain why the American president was criticizing U.S. reporters in that setting?
Well, I would note first that he took questions on Friday, and he took questions again
Biden
today,
doesn't
and
take
I think what he said
questions.
is that
Shut
they're not
up.
always on point. Now I know that isn't something that anyone wants to hear.
He
in
has a
here,
list and
but
goes,
what I think he was conveying
ABC.
is, today he might want to talk about COVID
NPR.
vaccines. Some of the questions
That's
are
it.
about
Bye.
that. He might want to talk about, and some of the questions are not always about the topic he's talking about in that day. I don't think it was meant to be.
I love Jen
a
trying to
hard
make it seem
cut
like
at
he's
the members of the
competent
media,
at
people
answering
he's taken
questions.
questions from today
Just
and on
stop.
Friday as well. Go ahead.
It happened that he was sitting next to the Prime Minister of India, one of the world's largest democracy, when he said that. It also followed the incident on Wednesday when he was sitting next to the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Is the president reticent to take questions when he's sitting next to a foreign leader in the Oval Office? Can we expect him to do that in the future?
Steve, he took questions earlier that day on Friday. He'd already taken questions that day. I think that was the context of his comments.
Uh-oh, she's mad.
But obviously, again, the question
And he's
was,
taken questions standing next to a foreign leader many, many times. in
Here
the past.
comes Jen.
I want to ask you about what Republicans are pointing to in the analysis from the Joint Committee on Taxation. They say, according to, if I've read the chart correctly, more than 16% of taxpayers would see their taxes increase under
Duh.
the bill
It'd be more than that.
approved by the House Ways and Means Committee. Will the president sign that bill as it is coming out of that committee, or will he insist on the changes so that he will maintain his commitment that taxes won't go up on people making $400,000 a year?
This is the stupidest question.
Document
Do you think rich people are just going to take the paid cut? No. They'll raise money elsewhere. And then who fits the bill? It's you and me that are end up paying more for things that we want or services that we are required for us to get to work or whatever. So we will fit the bill in the long run anyways. The idea that it's just like rich people, they're just going to be like taking a hit. Yeah, right. These people are smart and they have good CPAs. It's so stupid.
We feel that that's unfair and absurd, and the American
When you
people
raise
do not stand
taxes,
for
the
that.
people
But I
affected the most are the little people.
more substantive response.
Always.
Thanks, Jen. Going back to the Friday meeting,
It used to be a sucker.
Prime Minister,
Yeah,
the
let them-
President said that the Indian press was better behaved than the U.S. press, but the Indian press is ranked 142nd in the world, according to Reporters Without Borders, for press freedoms. I mean, how does he say that about the U.S. press compared to the Indian press?
I would say to you that having
Didn't mean
now
to do
worked
that
for
one.
the president, serving in this role for 9 months, having seen that he's taken questions from the press more than 140
Stop.
times, including today
I love it. She has
and
to make this
Friday,
up.
that he
He does a
certainly
good job.
respects the role
He's
of the
been
press,
taking
the
a lot
role
of
the freedom of
questions.
free press. We ensure that we have
He doesn't
press
ever
with
stutter.
us, of course, when we travel, that we have press with us for sprays in foreign
Sprays.
capitals, and we will continue to. And I think that should speak to his commitment to freedom of press around the world.
I want to go back to the border. On Friday, the Secretary of Homeland Security said that 12,000 migrants were released into the U.S. to have their cases heard by an immigration judge. 2,000 were expelled via flights. But we now have another group of migrants that's crossed the southern border of Mexico, could end up on the U.S. Southern border within the next month
Will
or so.
end up,
So
not
does the
could.
White House believe the message of deterrence, border is closed, do not come, is working?
Except for that little patch where you
Jackie,
can just
the White
walk
House
across.
believes that, and the president believes that our immigration system is incredibly broken. And we saw a surge. We've certainly seen.
Well,
a surge of
you're in
migrants come
charge,
to the border
so-
recently, we saw a surge back
Fix
in
it.
2019. We saw a surge back in 2014. Until we fix the system and we have a more effective and operational immigration system, until
Someone
we,
needs to ask, what does
have
it
an
look like to
asylum
fix the
processing
system as opposed to
that
just
works at the
saying
border,
we need to fix it?
we're going to continue
How?
to see cyclical
How?
challenges like this, and we've seen them across
Use your words.
Democratic and Republican presidents. So our objective continues to be not just addressing, obviously, the challenges we saw in Del Rio last week, but working with Congress to get immigration reform passed so we can fix the broken system and ensure we can have a better operational process moving forward.
Going to get fixed when the immigration bill has been, stalled in Congress since the president took office. It's been tough
Exactly.
to even get something like roads and bridges passed. That's coming to a head this week. How is
It won't
that
get
going
passed.
to work when there's
Just
also this backlog
push-
of
push the
1.3
buck to
million
another.
cases that are waiting to be heard, and on average it's taking 2.5 years for cases to be processed from the notice to appear to the case completion. That's almost double from a year ago. So what tools is the president going to use, because Congress is very slow right now?
Well, we would argue that for all of those Republicans who are standing at the border
She
and
looks so
giving
mad.
speeches about how broken the system is, why don't you join us and be a part of the solution instead of relying on speeches? Because we can work together and get immigration reform passed and make the system work and make it operational. Well, we can have border restrictions that make sense. We can have a humane system that ensures that people can apply for asylum in
No.
an equitable way. That's something
Republicans
we
and
all agree the system
Democrats
is
want
broken.
two
I
different
think the
systems
question is
for
who's
the
gonna
border
work with
thing,
us to
and
get
so they'll never
changes
meet in the
done
middle.
to
They'll
make
never
it
get a bill
better.
passed.
They're saying that a major reason that this bill can't move is because there's not enough border security provisions in it.
See?
Is the president going to bolster border security in order to pass immigration reform?
If Republicans are eager to have a conversation about comprehensive
Submit
immigration
and
reform,
bow.
we're happy to have
Take
that
the
conversation.
knee.
We haven't seen any willingness or appetite to do that. All we've seen is speeches and talking points to date. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Just to go back to the Huawei case for a second, you said there's no link between
I like that, though.
and the release of the two Michaels.
Do something, Republicans.
But China has long linked those two things, and given her release and the timing of their release, and it was a long-standing ask from the Chinese side, how do you communicate clearly that it wasn't a concession to them?
Well, our system clearly works differently from the Chinese system. We understand that. How we communicate it clearly is to reiterate that this was a legal decision made by the Department of Justice. They can speak to the reasoning. They can speak to their decision-making process.
Mhm.
But I would also reiterate that we are still pleased to see, of course, the release of the two Michaels, something we have been
Michaels.
pressing for,
Lion, dog, face, pony.
as our neighbors to the north have been pressing for, and others around the world for some time. Our Justice Department is independent. They make independent legal decisions, and we will continue to reiterate that. I would also say that there has been some assessment that this means a change in our China policy. That is absolutely not the case. This was a legal decision. Our policy and our approach to policy, our intention to hold China to account for its unfair economic practices, its coercive actions around the world, hold it to account on human rights abuses has not changed. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. In all these calls that are happening this week with Congress, I was just wondering how much is the president still kind of in a listening mode, listening to what members want, versus as a leader of the party, kind of in directing the members of the party? I mean, kind of piggybacking on Kelly's question about using leverage as president of the United States to force them maybe a bit to get on board with his agenda.
I don't know if you've met many senators. They're not going to be forced to do anything that's not in their interest. So I understand there's a little bit of that churn out there, but
saying they're hard
the
nosed.
president's been at this a long time. 36 years in the Senate, 8 years as vice president. He's been pretty effective to date at moving legislation forward, including when there was skepticism about his ability to get that done. As I've said many times, but it's just worth reiterating, he is not naive about the challenge here and how challenging this is to get these two big pieces and historic pieces of legislation across the finish line. So yes, the conversations are not just about him silently listening. I can assure you all of that. He's not a wallflower. He's engaging in conversations. He's having discussions with leaders. He's looking to chart a unifying path forward. And there's a give and take and a back and forth in those conversations. Absolutely. He's working to help unify Congress to get to a conclusive outcome.
Sorry.
Build Back Better World. And how would that
Okay,
work?
please stop.
And is the United States, is the White House looking for projects in Latin America to do this?
It's a great question. Obviously, Build Back Better World I referenced because it is an
Build Back
initiative
Better.
that, obviously we worked with the G7 and other leaders to begin to implement around the world and build that infrastructure around the world. I'd have to check with our team and see. Not that I am aware of, but I will check and see if there's anything more to report on that.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
In New York State, there's an anticipated
shortage of healthcare workers.
Oh, good
due to
question,
tens of
finally.
Thousands of them failing to comply with strict state vaccine
Mandates?
I'm wondering if the Biden administration is learning anything from these New
Say
York
it.
mandates, its own federal version of them, and if there's any surprise by the number of people who haven't complied and haven't been vaccinated.
So,
you're going to say it again.
As it relates to New York, one, we are tracking that a number of states, New York is one of them, are beginning to implement, as they're beginning to implement requirements, they're taking steps to work with healthcare systems to ensure that they have alternatives that they can backfill as needed. And that certainly is something we support, that some states like New York are doing. I would note that when this decision writ large was made, and this is the reason we did it on a federal level, right? It was because healthcare workers who've been on the front lines of this pandemic for a year and a half now were feeling at risk for their health, for their lives,
but
for their children's lives.
If they
and also
want to
is
continue
creating a
working
great
and they
deal,
don't want
not
to get the
a bit
vaccine,
of a
that's up
lesser
to them,
concern, but,
right?
but one for
No.
hospital associations for disruptions of workers, right? People were having to take off sick time, and even worse, of course. So this was a step that was taken in order to address that, to create certainty for these healthcare workers and also these systems. We have seen in a number of places around the country, the Methodist Hospital in Houston, which was one of the first organizations to implement a vaccine requirement, that they lost only 153 out of 25,000 employees. That means of the implementation of the vaccine mandate, I should say. That means less than 1% quit over a vaccine requirement. And new employment data out of May, 5 people out of 33,000 healthcare workers quit their jobs over a vaccine requirement. Henry Ford Health System in Detroit went from 68% vaccinated to 98%. So point is, we're seeing in a lot of places that this is working, it's effective, it's creating more certainty and protection in their workforces. There are places where they are contingency.
There
planning
is
to
a
ensure they're
nursing
backfilling.
shortage
We
in this
certainly
country.
support that as well.
I
We stay
have
in
a
touch
lot
with
of
them about the
families
steps
that
they're
work in
taking,
healthcare.
but we still continue to believe that putting in
Losing
place these
one
mandates
nurse
for
over a
businesses
vaccine
100
is
workers,
not
is
good.
something that is a positive step
So
for the
this idea
workforce,
that
for the
who cares
country,
is
and for a
so
lot of these
dumb.
businesses, as these business leaders
New
can
York
attest to as well.
currently right now is looking at bringing on bringing on the National Guard to help.
Exemption even there that the Biden administration might be looking at and thinking this might be a little bit too strict for what we would want to do nationally. Because it is a much bigger, to your point, most of those places that you mentioned are having tiny, sort of amounts of people leaving, but New York seems to be.
Sure. I know that obviously OSHA and as they're working to do the rulemaking that Weija asked about earlier, they're looking at a range of ways to make this as efficient, as clear for businesses as humanly possible. We've talked a little bit about the expectation of an exemption for a religious exemption, which is something certainly they'll look at. And I'm sure they will look at how it's applied to different health systems across the country, as well as businesses and how they have applied it across the country in the private sector where it's already been implemented as well. So they'll look at all of that. Their objective is to make this clear, but I think it's also important to note that in the vast majority of places, it's actually been quite effective. There's been a very, very small percentage of people who have left the workforce as it's been mandated.
Yeah, who cares about those people?
There's a group of about 40 Americans who are still alive from the Iranian
My grandpa's a smart guy. He
hostage
boarded
crisis,
those death traps.
who were supposed to be paid
Wow.
from a fund that Congress approved.
Congrats on your grandpa.
That's
awesome.
President Biden was vice president at the time that this law was passed. This money has been depleted, and I just wanted to see if the president supports rewriting this law at all to cover these individuals who didn't get their due, and whether he believes justice has been done by these individuals.
It's a good question. I know you guys have followed this closely from the Post. I'll have to check with our team, our legislative team, and just see kind of where we stand with that. And
Check with me, baby.
Back on the Hmong release for a moment. So the president spoke, Jim, with President Xi.
Whoa, did you hear that?
Did you hear that? The agreement that
that
ultimately
sneeze
led
in the background.
to Hmong's release was about 10 days later. Was he aware at the time, even if he did not discuss it with President Xi, about what the status of the discussions were?
In terms of
They
the
went to the
Department of
hospice. It's his
Justice,
heart.
I don't have any more detail.
So we don't know whether he knew. Do you
Yeah.
know when he first first learned.
Look,
I just
like
don't-
I said,
I'm not trying to be cute with you. I don't have.
I know
any more
heart
detail
failure,
on
you
it.
can
I'm
live for a
happy to
long
check if
time.
There's more I can convey.
A second question on all of this. You said that it wouldn't have any effect on our overall China policy.
Sorry to hear about your grandpa,
We've
man.
heard the president
Sucks.
very much during the time that he's been in office about Huawei itself. And obviously part of the effort here in reaching this agreement was to get a statement that would help
This
with
agreement.
the criminal case
I hate that
against
guy.
Huawei. How does the president assess that the campaign against Huawei is going right now?
Well, I
She
have
doesn't
not
know what to
spoken with
say.
him about his view on the campaign against Huawei. What I will tell you and just reiterate is that this was a legal decision. It does not change our view, this administration's view, or his view as it relates to our concerns about economic practices, coercive actions, and in fact, the actions that were admitted to by this individual. I mean, those type of actions. So
I think she fell asleep,
it does
too.
not change our policy. It does not change our approach to policy. It does not change our concerns.
He's asking about
with
Huawei,
some
but
of
she
the
doesn't know.
practices we've seen from the government and leaders within China as it relates to economic action.
Something a little bit different, which is, does the president believe that the initiatives you have underway to contain Huawei spread through Latin America, Africa, elsewhere, are actually yielding results in the first 9 months of his presidency? You've seen them win.
No. The answer
some
is
big
no.
Contracts. You've also seen
But
them
he also
have a
doesn't care.
difficult
Let's
time
be
getting
real.
A lot of the semiconductors and other parts they need.
I'd have to check with our team on an assessment of that.
Right.
David. It's a totally fair
AKA, I'm not going to answer your question.
For you, which has to do with Iran. The foreign minister of Iran, the new foreign minister, was in New York last week. He said that they were less interested in the details of what a revived JCPOA agreement said, and much more interested in making sure that they got the sense of all the benefits from sanctions relief that they believe actually back to President Obama they did not, even after the agreement was signed. Is it President Biden's
Just
view
ask
at
the
this
question.
point that if you do get back into the agreement, that Iran has to see more benefit than it actually got back after the 2015 agreement was reached?
You mean receive more benefits than they received back in the last administration?
Not on paper, but in reality. The Iranian complaint essentially was companies were still too reluctant to do business with them.
I think, David, where we
She
are
has no idea.
Is we're still quite a few steps away.
I
And
think,
so
David,
we are
I don't know what
eager,
you're
of course,
asking
to go
me,
back
and I don't
have,
even know what to say.
Discussions, diplomatic discussions in the next round of negotiations. They may not be interested in all the details. We certainly are interested in all the details, but I just am not in a position to assess what that will look like at this point in time. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Does the White House have any reaction from news today that John Hinckley, who of course attempted to assassinate President Reagan 4 decades ago, was
Right,
granted,
exactly.
Unconditional release effective next June?
I don't have any response.
Whoa, that mask makes his nose look like a triangle. What was that?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Me, oh!
Oh, sorry, I was calling on him. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So sorry.
Oh, right, okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
Awkward.
Today marks 4 weeks since the last U.S. troops left Afghanistan. And since then, the U.S. has helped at least 160 Americans and U.S. residents leave, but thousands more green card holders and at-risk Afghans remain. Does the
Double
White House
mask, bro.
think that
Look at
that's
this
an
guy's
acceptable
mask
way
right
of getting
here.
people out, and how do you measure
That is
measure
not a good
success?
look. That schnoz.
Well, our objective was at the time and continues to be to work with our partners in the region, including the Qataris and others in neighboring countries, to ensure there are movement of flights and that flights are back up and operational. We have seen many people depart, and that we expect and hope will be ongoing. We knew that we needed to take a number of steps to work with the international community to ensure there's continued pressure that the Taliban would abide by their commitments. And we also knew that we needed to get the flights up and going. The flights have been up and going, and so far we've moved some people over land. We're working with our partners in the region to continue to get more people out who want to depart.
Is the White House happy with how quickly things are moving?
Our objective is to continue to make progress.
Someone
and
needs to
we're
tell that
doing
guy to get his
exactly
mask
that, and
off.
the
It's
State Department,
ridiculous.
of course, is leading this effort. Go ahead.
Just looks
The
so
Education
dumb.
Secretary supports mandatory vaccinations for students.
Vaccinations!
Mandatory!
Mandatory!
Does agree with that? Does the White House believe that all students should be vaccinated before they go to school?
Well, we
I guess that's
always
not
felt it would
mandate.
be up to local
Sorry about that one.
and district school districts to make that determination. Certainly, we support more people getting vaccinated, more schools and superintendents.
Even if their doctor
and
says no.
Leaders taking steps to protect their
They get.
communities. But our view is it will continue and should continue to be up to schools and local school districts.
Federal requirement at this scale.
We
Okay,
have
up
not
to
put in
me.
place one. No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So taking you back in time to Friday, as President Biden was meeting
Australia,
with Prime
aren't
Minister
you glad to be
Modi,
out of there?
The Prime Minister of Pakistan took to the stage at the UN and delivered some scathing criticism of the U.S.'s actions in Afghanistan. And he's lamented the lack of direct
Scathing.
engagement between himself and President Biden. So I was just wondering why hasn't the President used this aggressive diplomacy to answer that call from the Prime Minister of Pakistan to engage
Because he's
directly?
tired.
To be in touch directly with the leader of Pakistan. We have been in touch at very high levels with leaders in Pakistan, from the State Department, from the Department of Defense, and from other key components of the administration. The president has
I work
not
in
spoken
education.
with every
God, I
foreign
do
leader
hate
at
the
this point
fact
in
that
time.
they're
That is
just
absolutely
going
true.
to the-
But he,
I don't know if
of
people
course,
find
has
this.
a team, an expert
Right.
team deployed to do.
Dude, I used to work in
exactly that.
education.
So
I got out of education because I couldn't stand. Well, education. Loved hanging out with kids. I used to work with middle schoolers and high schoolers, but can't do it
in
anymore.
that particular regard. We have high-level engagement from the State Department, Defense Department, and others at this point in time.
Point soon?
I don't have anything to predict at this point in time. If they do a call, we will, of course, read it out to all of you. Go ahead, Yumish.
Thanks, Jen. A question on the pressure the president's facing. The president said today that victory is at stake this week. Can you explain more about what he meant there, and also what pressure is he feeling as Democrats face this sort of intense legislative week?
Well, I would say he said that at the end of several questions, just to give the full context, when it was like, what is at stake? And he said, victory's at stake. I don't think he said it quite exactly in the same
What he
terms
was like, and then I
conveyed,
was
which is
like, and
okay,
then you
but,
were like.
Look, the president is very committed to this agenda. He laid it out back in the spring. He thinks that it's far past time to rebuild our roads, rails, and bridges.
There's
He
more
thinks
in the
it is
bill.
far past time to ensure we are
I
doing
just keep
what's
my head
needed
down
to
and laugh
address
at
the
the poor
climate
bureaucrats
crisis.
and
He thinks
say-
it's far past
That
time
is
to lower
a hard place to be.
costs
That's where I
for
used to be,
working families,
Mr.
whether
Elite.
it's childcare, the cost of college, elder care that are impacted.
Especially Mr. Lee being a man in education is a whole different bugaboo. I was the only guy at my school, the only one. Of course, all the boys gravitated towards me because they wanted a male figure, but the female teachers hated that. But what are you gonna do? Some teachers loved it, and other teachers hated me. I just whatever.
His messages, let's
Keep making a difference in those kids' lives,
get
man.
this done for the
It's
American
awesome.
people.
Can I ask you one quick
Yeah.
question on the Haitian migrant issue?
Sure.
Can you talk a bit more about the need to continue to use Title 42 and why that's so important to this administration? And also overall with the Border Patrol, Force Patrols, they've been using those forces for a very long time.
Say it.
Is the Biden administration going to continue to use
Talk
those
about
Force
the fake
Patrols
news.
throughout the rest of the country? I know they're temporarily suspended in Texas, or in Del Rio, Texas, rather.
They are temporarily suspended in Del Rio, Texas. I think
Due to
what Secretary
out-of-context
Mayorkas talked about
pictures.
a bit when he
Great
was
job.
here on Friday is the fact that when these horse patrols are used effectively, they often can help people who are in distress. That's something they do. They can find people.
Right.
There is a reason that these horse patrols have been in place and continue to
Oh,
be in
they're
place
starting
in
to
some
walk
areas
back
across
the
the
negative
country.
side effects of the
course, the Department
horses.
of
Look at
Homeland Security will
them.
continue to look
Look
at
at you. Look at you, Dad.
includes, what that looks like.
I thought they
They've
were
been
racist
suspended in Del Rio,
horses.
Texas. That was a step
You
in
found out that
response, of
story
course,
wasn't
directly
true?
to those horrific
Oh,
photos.
no.
But beyond that, I think it's important to note
Well,
that
we
as
like the
Secretary
horses.
said, the vast majority of the Border
We
Patrol
like 'em.
and the Horse Patrol
I wanna ride a
are
pony.
doing their job, and they're doing their job effectively. Of course, we are going to assess and we are going to call out when we see occasions, as we did with the photos.
And
and
out
the
of
video last
yeah,
week,
photos.
that,
You can make a
don't
photo
meet our
look bad
bar,
any way
that,
you want.
that bring out strong emotions
I
for
went to
good
the school
reason
dinner.
from
I
people
went
in this,
from being the only man in the
administration and
school
around the
day
American
besides
public.
When you
Dude,
clarify
it was
about
me and the
victory,
janitor too working out of
is
school.
at
That's
stake.
hilarious.
Could you just explain a little bit more what you mean by that? I just want to make sure that the context is clear when the president said victory is at stake, what you see him as meaning there.
He means victory for the American people. Victory in lowering the cost of childcare, lowering the cost of elder care,
V for
rebuilding our roads,
victory.
rails, and bridges, becoming more competitive with China, investing in our climate crisis.
agenda per se, not victory for
Well, that
Crisis.
is his
Anytime you
agenda.
hear the word crisis, your ears should perk.
They're mutually the same.
Crisis means government can do whatever they want.
Does the president have
Hey, we're in a
specific
crisis. It's for your,
position
it's for your
on
safety.
The Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act that passed the Senate.
Thank
and is
you.
awaiting consideration in the House. And then in a recent interview with Bloomberg, John
My
Kerry
impression of
seemed to
Jen.
suggest
Uyghur
that in talks with
concentration
the
camps?
Chinese,
Huh? I
his
didn't
administration
hear
sees
you.
human
What was that
rights
other
and
question?
Climate change as two separate issues. He said, yes, we have issues, a number of different issues, but first and foremost, this planet must be protected. Is it the president's view that climate change is first and foremost over
What's that guy's
a
mask?
host of other issues?
Well, to be fair,
Guy
I
looks
think
like he's
what
wearing
the
a diaper in
Secretary
his
is conveying is
face.
what I just conveyed about our China policy, is that we are going to continue to speak out when we have concerns,
Come on,
whether it's
man.
their economic approach, whether it's human rights issues, which we will raise privately and we will also raise publicly. But we will
Privately.
also look to work
Sure you
with
will.
the Chinese on areas where we can, and
China.
obviously climate is one of them.
Specifically on the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, does the president have a position?
I will check with our legislative team. Obviously, he's spoken out about his concerns about the treatment of Uyghurs in the past, but let me
Sure,
check on the specific
sure.
questions.
No, he said they have a different way of doing
You
stuff than
touched
we
on
do.
this, but,
He
I'm
didn't
wondering,
speak out.
the
Shut your
El Paso
mouth.
Times has walked back their claim that border agents were using whips to deter Haitian migrants. This is kind of a controversy. Some people are weighing what is a whip versus what is a rein. And the
Yeah,
El Paso
exactly.
Times put out a clarification saying it was not an actual whip. Does that change anything?
It was
for the
horse reins?
administration in light of the statements that were made last week?
I don't think anyone could look at those photos and think that was appropriate action or behavior or something that should be accepted.
Yeah, but you're taking a
within,
photo and you're putting
our
your
administration.
bias
There's an
on it, and then
investigation
you watch
that's
the video, you
ongoing.
don't see any of that.
We'll let that play out, but our reaction to the photos has not changed.
Pure emotion. And that's, I guess that's okay. It's okay to be completely emotional.
Emerald, I know you like to shout at the end. Next time we'll do it during the briefing. Thanks, everyone.
Next time we'll do it during the briefing. I just won't call on you. I can't believe she said that. Why don't you ask me during the briefing? I tried to, but you didn't call on me. Oh, this administration, politicians, it's all about their little gotcha moments, and they're having their little speeches. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Oh, China has daddy issues. Just give me some cheap cuss. Yeah, I'm all about my cheap phones. I don't care if children were forced into labor and these Uyghur Muslims. No big deal. Just give me my iPhone. I want it for $400. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Derek O'Shea Show. It means so much to me. I appreciate you. Check out my newscast I just put out. I'm going to do another one later, I think. And also look out for my live show I do with my robot friend coming up this week. We have a good time. We talk about all kinds of stuff. Thank you guys so much. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Just kidding. Don't do any of that. Don't tell anybody. Keep this a secret. And have a fantastic day for the rest of the day. Seriously, have a fantastic day. And just remember, this is literally the mouthpiece of this administration, because Joe Biden doesn't actually answer questions or get asked questions. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to Derek O'Shea Show. I hope you have a fantastic day. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode. I freaking love you. Goodbye. Welcome to the Derek O'Shea Show, where we discuss culture, news, politics, and more. Sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the show. Be sure to tell your friends and family about the revolution.